Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. We're taking in all your calls, your social media queries as well as your emails, so do keep them coming in. I'm being joined in the studios by Hemendra Hazari. He's an independent banking expert. I also have Rajiv Bakshi. He's a senior advisor Centrum and the ex-ED of the Bank of Baroda. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here tonight with us to run us through all of the queries. Let's get started right away with our show. All right, the first query we're taking in today is a call coming in from R. Swaminathan. Go ahead, Mr. Swaminathan.
We are engineering consultants to the pharmaceutical industry. As engineering consultants, the only asset we have is our brains and our manpower. Whenever we go and ask someone for a loan, working capital, they ask for some security or in mortgage. As consultants who have only brain to be mortgaged, I don't know how to get working capital loans. Is there any way the government can help us in getting working capital at low interest rates?
Okay, we were talking about this in our previous episode in terms of bank financing for MSMEs. But just to refresh, things for our viewers, maybe we can run them through his specific query and talk about funding for MSMEs. I want to start with you, Mr. Bakshi.
Banks find it difficult to find any asset to back the loan that they give. They can give clean loans to consultants. There is no ban on that, but most of the banks don't feel comfortable beyond a particular amount, and very, very small amounts will not work for them. Now, as I assess the situation, in their case, what is going to happen is they are going to pool in the human resources who work, they pay their salaries, they pay the rent, they pay the monthly expenditures, and then they sell their services to the client, and they will have receivables from the clients. So, initially, I think the company is already running and they must be providing consulting services to various organizations. If the receivables are from companies which are credit worthy, if are reputed, for example, pharmaceutical companies, and pharmaceutical companies, most of the names will be known, well known. If those invoices drawn on them are acknowledged by them as dues, or otherwise their books show that they have got receivables from credible buyers to whom they have supplied their services, they can borrow from the banks against those receivables. Those receivables do form a good pool of security for the banks. Yes, that will not do for a collateral security, and there is a guarantee run by SIDBI, which was formulated by Government of India, which is known as CGT MSE, under which up to 1 crore the banks are not to ask for any collateral security, they have to cover it under that guarantee. So, up to 1 crore collateral free loan is available. As far as primary security is concerned, their receivables from good credible pharma or other companies make a good pool of security, and bank they should be able to make their case to borrow against that. But here if is a, so it can be directly lending against receivables by way of a cash credit account, or it can be actual discounting of the invoices, or if the companies who are buyers of services are ready to sign a bill of exchange or only accept an invoice, banks can lend against that.
Okay, fair enough. I know his answer has been pretty detailed, but would you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think I would just like to add that if you look at most of the loans that banks give for MSMEs, you will find that a lot of them are loan against property. So, I think if these promoters have some properties in their name, they can always pledge it to the bank and get a loan, because most of the MSMEs, because as he very rightly pointed out, banks in India for MSMEs, they like to have security. And from what data shows is that loan against property is the most obvious security that banks lend against. So, whatever properties they have in their personal names, they can always pledge it to the banks.
So, that's a fairly detailed answer for you, Mr. Swaminathan. I hope that answers everything that you've raised in your query. Let's take in our next query, and this one is coming to us from Neil Jain. If we have that one, if we can pull it up, who wants to know how we can get access to better technology at reasonable cost for MSMEs, and this is a query that's come to us on social media. What would you have to say to that?
See, the government has various schemes, especially for technology upgradation. And again, the nodal agencies are SIDBI and NABARD, and a lot of the government banks give this scheme. So, of course, they don't give very sizable loans under this scheme, but it's specifically for technology upgradation, and the interest rates are also not very high. So, in case of this particular request, I think he can qualify for a loan under these particular schemes.
Will he be able to get bank funding if he wants to, look at an expansion and therefore bring in technology at an additional cost?
Yes, of course. See, for example, for the textile sector, there is a technology upgradation and finance scheme, TUFS as it is known as, which is got huge subsidies built in that. So, if you are upgrading your technology in the textile area, there is a TUFS scheme, and similarly there are certain schemes in some other areas also, where you get not only capital subsidy, you get huge interest subsidies also.
Okay, if he wants technology specifically, under I think the Startup India or Make in India, one of these two, the government has set up a fund where it has purchased certain patents from various people, and you can subscribe to this at I think only about 20 lakhs is going to be your maximum sum of money that they will give you. But there is this pool available which the government has set up, and you can see whether they have that appropriate technology that you want.
Let's take in our next query. This is an email coming to us from KL Raya. Wants to know what are the strategic principles to adopt for competing in the digital space. So specific to his question in terms of what are some of the do's and don'ts, strategic principles to keep in mind for the digital age.
See, the marketplace has totally changed today, and a lot of units that are coming up. So first thing is you have to know whichever means you are going to adopt, you should know who are going to be your target group of customers. So if you are, for example, if you are in the food business, restaurant business, or something related to that, and you feel the younger crowd, the professionals, those who are earning well and those who don't have time, if you are targeting them, then you have to adopt those Facebook or the Instagrams of that type of marketing.
So every kind of digital tool.
Yeah, exactly. So because initially SMEs will have limited means to be able to advertise. So you should be, the first principle should be, you should be able to exploit the free means as far as available. For example, Google also provides search engine optimization, in which it's not a paid scheme, but you have to have you have to meet their criteria. You have to have the right value add for the customers in that, and then you can get the first listing when somebody is searching for that. When you can, or in Facebook, you can invite a friend first to endorse, look at that and endorse, and escalate it to all the groups in which he is there. Or you can, if you are something which, for example, food, and you want to use visuals a lot, then you can use Instagram. So you have to find the appropriate media that you are going to use, and to keep the cost low, you have to see that you are able to escalate that one from to the other, and you are able to exploit the free side of Google and all. It is very easy to advertise on them, but advertisement may not get that much of value for you. You may pay money, but you will not get value. Rather than this type of things may get better value.
Sure. Would you want to add to that?
See, in the first generation of the digital age, what you found was that these very large entities like a Google, an Amazon, a Facebook, they have totally dominated their business segment. So therefore, for an SME now to come into the digital space, he has to have a very, in my opinion, a very localized strategy. He has to use the tools available, maybe through mobile apps or various platforms on the internet. But his strategy really should be more localized, because normally SMEs are much smaller. Therefore, they have limited resources. They have to start local, and then try to dominate the local space, and then through probably getting private equity funding, they can start scaling up. But they cannot follow the same strategies of, say, what a Google followed, because that's total domination what we have seen, and they are not in a position with the resources they have to undertake such strategies.
And therefore also digital can then be the best friend and partner, because it will help them at least cut down cost to a large extent.
See, most definitely, at least with the use of technology and its advancement, what we have seen that at least these local players have these tools available. Before the advent of the digital age, and MSC really did not have much marketing tools available as compared to what he has now.
Fair enough. All right, gentlemen, let's take a very quick break at this point, but don't go anywhere. We'll continue taking all of your queries on the other side. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, and we're continuing to take in all of your queries. And the next one is a call coming in from Pradeep Bhatia. Go ahead, Pradeep.
How to educate our dairy farmers so that by using the product, they get better quality milk and more milk yield, and their money is doubled every day. How to educate our dairy farmers?
Specifically with regards to the best way of, ensuring that his employees go about getting education.
No, he's talking about using farmers who might be the users of the product they are manufacturing or marketing. So his question is very timely, because the government is also focused on bringing another white revolution and doubling the milk production. In that, it has been found that the cows in India, the desi variety, they yield 1 to 2 liters on an average per day, whereas the hybrid varieties or the crossbred variety or the imported varieties, they yield much higher. So the government is also going along that plan. They want to increase the yield. So this is very timely. So if he connects to the state government or the central government, that ministry, because they will be, this is just a first cut, they will be coming with further guidelines, deliberations on that. Nowadays, the government department can come up with policies and with the enabling environment, but they depend a lot on the private sector to do this work. Now, we do not know what exact product is he in, but with that support, whether he needs any market development fund, but he will have to, he can use the extension network of the state agricultural department. He can also, if he connects with the lead district managers of the various banks, who are very well connected with in the districts in which they operate. Naturally, they must be focusing on certain districts. They can find who is the lead bank there. They can find what is the state government agency doing the extension work. There are village level workers who go to the villages, and so they will have to train them. If they cannot employ enough people to go into villages and do that extension work, they can very well utilize the state government infrastructure, because we have got, for example, the health ministry has very well utilized the ASHA or whatever to get the health awareness in the villages. Agriculture has always been, and now that this is getting the focus from the government, I think that will be the right opportunity. He can use the infrastructure of the banks, can use the infrastructure of the state government for extension work. Ultimately, educating farmers means you don't get them into a classroom, you go to their places, talk to them on the chopal together, or talk to them one to one. And if in one village they can create one farmer who adopts that and becomes a model, from there it will fire up. Then he will have success stories to tell.
All right. Hope that answers your query, Pradeep. Let's take in our next query, and this is a call coming in from Shrikant Gurjar. Go ahead, Shrikant.
We are manufacturers and servicing of computers. My question would be, would the GST simplify my taxation for SMEs? And would the GST also reduce the documentation involved in complying with all the government agencies? Currently, the documentation is a bit on the higher side. So would the GST really simplify this matter also? Do
you think GST per se, in terms of the education or simplifying of documentation like he's talking about, is that something that, is there education available for MSMEs?
Let's come to the education separately, because even it's not a reality so far, but it's very close to becoming a reality. And his question embodies what the whole idea of GST is. The whole idea of GST is to make the nation one market, to make interstate flows of goods more smooth, the documentation less onerous, and compliance easier. So, as far as the revenue is concerned, the government is still debating on the tax neutral rate. But the whole idea of doing that is that the trade flourishes, that it becomes easier to do trade across states, and the document. Therefore, MSMEs can definitely look forward to an era where the documentation hassles, where their compliance hassles will be much lower.
All right, let's take in our next query. This one is coming to us on Facebook from Sajid Mirajkar. He says, we've seen a tremendous downfall in profit margins of most companies of late, despite customer demand being high and prices higher than before. When will this regime end? Would you like to take that question?
You see, if you look at his question, you will find on one hand he is saying the customer demand is high, prices of the product are high, but his margins are not sufficient. Now, to me that is a little contradictory, because if the demand is high and prices are high, means that your product is commanding pricing power, which means that he should have higher margins. Now, this again, in this present environment where you are hardly seeing any sales growth by the top companies, it does not look like there is very high demand for anything out there today, which reflects a demand slowdown. So, the question is, to me, if you are operating in a demand slowdown, you really have to upgrade your products to get some type of pricing power. You can do one way, is that from what we have seen in the last 2 quarters, is that because of global decline in commodity prices, you have seen an expansion in the margins even when demand has not been very high. But that is not within the government's control, it is not within the entrepreneur's control, it is a global event. So, in this particular case, he must find out how he can upgrade his product, get it more innovative, whether he has to put in some technology into it, because that will give you pricing power, because lowering cost is not a consistent strategy going forward to increase margins.
All right, our next query, this is a call coming in from Ajay Sood, wants to know about labor laws, if I'm not mistaken, Ajay.
My question is regarding the labor laws, because these days laws are very much favor of the laborer, but as an employer, we have no right. Sometimes laborers are putting pressure on us. We need some relaxation in labor laws which should give some rights to the employer also, particularly to the MSME sector.
Okay. Queries of this sort, are obviously coming back around, saying on one hand is retention of people, but on the other is the regulatory environment that really exists as far as people are concerned. And maybe I'd like to start with you to talk about the labor laws that he's asking us.
You see, labor in India today, contrary to what many people tell you, is not such a big issue. Because one, even under the supposedly stringent labor laws, corporate India have been removing, rapidly contracting and rapidly expanding their labor force. They have been replacing permanent labor with contract labor, which all is extremely difficult to have done even with the present labor laws. So, there has been really, the labor laws has not been a deterrent for corporate India. Second point is that despite all this, the government, under the present government, has come up with a lot of exemptions which make it easier for the private sector to actually hire and fire laborers. They are actually relaxing the trade union laws, they are relaxing the contract labor laws. So, on paper also they are relaxing these laws. So, to me, labor is not really such a big issue for the MSMEs as compared to, say, the funding requirements or the technology upgradation. To me, that is a smaller issue which unfortunately has tend to get, vastly exaggerated.
So, one is, for example, earlier we had that up to 20 employees if you have, then you, or more than 20 employees you have, you cannot hire and fire. But now Rajasthan government amended that to make some 300 employees and things. So, various states are coming up that only larger units will be subject to that. Below that you can remove whenever you want. Recently, very recently, there has been an amendment, the new textile policy, for example, which came, which says that like the word was contractual employees, and for textile and garment sector, our competitiveness with Bangladesh and Vietnam was suffering because they had liberal labor laws compared to ours. We could not take that. Industry's demand was that if the demand is there, we will hire people. If the demand is not there, we will remove them. So, there is what they have used a new term which I am forgetting, but it is something like a fixed term employment. Instead of calling it contract employment, it is fixed term. Okay, I am employing you for 6 months. You will get the same salary as a permanent employee, but your term is only 6 months unless renewed after that. So, those things are being brought about to just to take care of the woes that labor once taken in cannot be removed, whether you have business, you do not have business, and as Hemendra said about unionization also. So, and this government is very much focused on the ease of doing business, and this is one important element of that.
Sure.
So, I would just like to add to this is that you see, every corporate, every employer really wants more easy terms for employees, easy terms for employers. So, actually what it does is it suppresses the laborer's wage. Now, while this is very good for industry or for individual companies, if it is done across the economy, what you're effectively doing is you're effectively suppressing demand for the entire economy, which nobody realizes, because each one looks at it from his company's perspective or from that industry's perspective. But if this is uniformly implemented in an economic slowdown which we are currently in, it actually suppresses the overall demand in the economy, and therefore the demand for goods and services in India will be further suppressed.
Well said.
All right, let's take in our next query, and this one is coming to us on Facebook. Piyush Patel has written in to us saying he's in the space of agricultural products. A lot of large conglomerates are starting businesses in that industry, and he says that the government has also opened up 100% FDI, which is a threat to businesses like himself. How do MSMEs compete with the larger peers effectively?
See, ultimately, whether you enter a business looking at some demand and what niche you can have in that. So, what are you bringing in which can make you competitive? Whether you are closer to the markets, you are closer to the raw material, you are closer to the skill area, you are able to manage within the family a much lower cost enterprise, or funding would never be the strength of smaller MSMEs. That is the muscle power of the larger corporations. So, you have to be very clear about what is your USP in doing a particular thing, and improve your product continuously or improve your marketing continuously. They will not be able to give longer credit periods compared to larger players who are coming to the market. At some stage, if the challenge really becomes real, then there will definitely, if FDI 100% comes and large corporate comes, I can only envisage that they will need a number of smaller feeder units into them, and therefore maybe, and it's a maybe direct, instead of directly marketing, they may be feeding into those larger companies, and they may become their preferred partners or channel partners or vendors to them.
All right, thank you for that detailed answer as always, Mr. Bakshi. Hemendra, thank you very much. We've run completely out of time on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow. Do remember that if you have any queries pertaining to your business, you can write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on that number on your screen, and we'll get our experts to answer your queries. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.